We tend to all know about the really great teaching tools, but we sometimes miss the small ones. Like, we usually all know about the little finger that students can use to kind of make sure there's a finger either between words or sentences to make that space. However, we sometimes forget the easy things like old frisbees. Old frisbees are great to allow that cross-body movement, but also to teach vocabulary. You can put the word on the front and the vocabulary definition on the back. You can also put synonyms and antonyms on frisbees and just allow students to throw them. Gets that cross-body movement. Again, you're wanting to go across the midline, and when they catch them, they can say the word and the definition and throw them to another person. You can switch out what kind of frisbees has what on the front and back, like if you have a certain word and another person has the opposite, that way they can throw to the person bringing in. Or you can practice things like sight word sentences and all of that on a swing. Anything that gets you some movement, that back and forth movement, side to side movement, and cross-body movements are what you're looking for. Even if that means every time you eat lunch with students or have snack, you place all of the items across their body that they're going to need to get in order to eat that snack, just to get as many cross-body movements as you can, because what you don't want to happen is students you'll find have some issues in reading development when they have some tracking problems, but also when they have some cross-body issues, because that right hemisphere to left hemisphere isn't going fast enough to kind of help with that process. So you'll see this in a student when you call them in their whole body turns as opposed to just their head. So if their whole entire body has to go the direction and face you as opposed to just their head or portion of their body, it's usually they'll have issues with their midline. So you want to work on those midline issues. Last thing sensory-wise that I wanted to make sure you're aware of, easy things to do for your students. We talked a little bit about some students who struggle to pay attention while you're working on reading. Again, as multisensory as you can make it, the better they're able to attend to you during that instruction, and ensuring that you have continual breaks and continual movement options within your instruction will always help. But also if you're looking for that student who really just needs constant movement, things like the old exercise bands that you tie around the bottom of the chair or the desk and allow them to push against them or put their feet on the other end and pull against them gives them some feedback that helps a lot. They also make what's called bouncy bands. Bouncy bands, you'd actually put these on the two ends of the chair, and this would go, it's a band that has the two sides, it would go on the opposite end, and the reason these are here is to help keep the band up high enough so that the student can push down, pull up, or push in and out on the band, and it gives some feedback. That's another quick, easy way to get some sensory on top of what we talked about before, like the felt and the foam and the sandpaper all hot glued underneath your desk, and to make things a little more multisensory while, because there are times where you're going to need to read or you're going to need to do something where maybe you can't constantly give a sensory input, but still having some sort of sensory input there for them. Remember, some things that are stimulating to some of us can be calming for others, and vice versa. So for some of us, eating something crunchy is alerting, and it helps us to kind of stay awake while we're listening to you. So I recommend things like high protein crunchy things like peanuts or any kind of nut or protein bar, or something that allows that protein to get in them, so that it's not just alerting, but it also kind of gives them that protein to keep them going through the day. However, for some students, you're actually looking for calming, and sometimes peppermint can be calming if they're sucking on something peppermint, or blowing bubbles can be calming, or blowing out fingers. We call it the wishing well, and you wish somebody a specific something, and you blow out that finger, blow out each and every finger until they have allowed that breath to come in and out, which can also be calming. So just looking at what you're doing with students, is it alerting, is it calming? Because it is different for different students. The same thing we could be doing could be one or the other. Looking at brain breaks, this could be why some of your students who maybe have sensory overload, when you're giving a brain break like any sort of YouTube video where all the kids are doing movements and they're having to follow along the dance, and you have one student that's literally just standing there the whole time. It's actually okay for that student to stand there if what they're needing is an off break. What that means is everything else, their pace of their day is so fast, they struggle a lot with transitions. And so this student actually just needs nothing while a transition is going on. So they may just check out during your brain break, which is okay. They need that moment as a transition's happening to kind of breathe and check in and kind of regroup, and then they're ready for instruction. So if you force them to do the brain break that everybody else is doing, you'll actually find more issues. They won't be ready to go to the next activity. They'll be upset because they didn't finish the activity before, because they just can't start and stop, but they also can't do a transition seamlessly. So it's okay during your brain breaks to allow some of that as well. For students who don't need that kind of block out time and really are just refusing to do a brain break, but you know they need the movement, then by all means get them involved in that movement, whatever it is. But for those students who may struggle with transitions, you might want to think about that, as they just might need some time to kind of tune out completely before they can get back into instruction.